there is another book out on Trump and foolishness and the whole bit. And there is this narrative that General Milley was concerned that Trump was making too many comparisons to Hitler and that we were going down a neo-Nazi lane, right? Now, I thought everybody was saying that. Everybody I knew was saying that.
Yeah.
That this is, I guess, groundbreaking information for General Milley. Everybody I knew said that they saw comparisons. Not shocking. I was saying on these airwaves, but listen to a bit of what General Milley, Mark Milley, recalling election concerns and references to Hitler.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs was deeply concerned after the election that Donald Trump would try to use the military to remain in office. The Washington Post says General Mark Milley, in the upcoming book about Trump, I Alone Can Fix It, made numerous references to the onset of Nazi power in Germany, saying he had a stomach-churning feeling about a possible Reichstag moment when Hitler used an attack on the German parliament to establish a Nazi dictatorship. Milley, who had already publicly apologized at that point for walking with the president through Lafayette Square after Black Lives Matter protesters were forcibly removed from the area, is quoted telling aides he feared the equivalent of brown shirts in the streets after a briefing about a pro-Trump rally protesting the election. The book describes how Milley started informal meetings with other military leaders about how they would refuse to follow any orders that Trump issued they saw as illegal. Robin, very disturbing.
Very disturbing. Okay. I don't know when we're going to get to a point where we're not really disturbed. I think the writing is on the wall. And I'm going to say this too. I think that Governor DeSantis could be as dangerous as Trump if he becomes president. I think he's going to run. He's Trump in a cleaner suit who actually understands the Constitution. So the writing is on the wall on where this democracy can or cannot go. But I just think it's funny. I mean, and this is like headline news everywhere. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that, he actually saw elements of a dictator. How could you not see it? And it took you until the last year of his term for you to see it. And you're General Mark Milley. Oh, great. Wonderful. And when you saw it, how were you a part of it? How did you add to it when you pushed all those protesters away? I'm sorry, what is it called? What square?
Lafayette.
What's the square?
Lafayette Square.
Lafayette
Mhm.
Like how?
Right.
You were a part of the
in his
foolishness.
fatigues and right.
Yeah.
So you were a part of it. You made him feel empowered. You made him feel dictatorish. Right. David, go ahead.
No, I don't want to excuse General Milley for that moment where he came out there walking with the president through the park with his fatigues or BDUs on. That was a bad moment. In fairness to him, he did apologize for it. He did come out publicly a short time later and say he made a mistake.
He did.
I do think a lot of generals and old-time Washington hands, older establishment figures, had a harder time seeing some of this coming and had a hard time understanding the warnings that lots of people were giving throughout the Trump era that President Trump would threaten democratic institutions. This new reporting out in this book by my Washington Post colleagues, I think adds some texture to it, but it's possible that Milley was wary of Trump, but maybe didn't. I'm giving the best case scenario for General Milley here, that he was wary of President Trump while he was still working for him, but maybe it was only at a later stage that he was like, oh, this is actually brewing into what political scientists call an autogolpe or a self-coup, right? Not taking power, but illegally holding on to power. I worked on an article that never published during the election cycle, trying to get some people to explain and argue what generals and people in the Pentagon could do if such a thing played out. This was before Election Day. And one of the reasons that it didn't come to fruition, the article, is because there's no playbook in the Pentagon that tells generals, step one, here's what to look for if there's a coup. Step two, if you decide it's a coup, here's what you do. There's no official decision tree. There's no manual for dealing with this. And so if the reporting is correct, and I'm sure it is, that Milley just sort of informally got with other top generals and were like, we're going to have to agree not to follow illegal orders. I mean, good on them for, sort of drawing a line at that point, but also it shows just how vulnerable you can be if someone like President Trump wants to perpetuate the big lie, has supporters behind them, has members of Congress in their own party unwilling to stand up for the Constitution, how close you can come to a failed self-coup. I mean, just because a coup is done shittily and fails doesn't mean it wasn't an attempted coup.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right. Yeah. Go ahead, Reese.
So that's where we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think to David's point, I think Trump has exposed how fragile and vulnerable our so-called democracy really is, right? I mean, there is no playbook for what he was attempting. There was no playbook for insurrectionists storming the Capitol. And I'd also like to point out, it was clearly an inside job because people had rumblings of something going on. If General Milley was concerned about this this pro-Trump protest, why weren't there more contingencies in place from the Capitol Police to deal with, staffing levels and things of that nature, or to even, give the go-ahead for the National Guard to come in and help guard the Capitol? But I think it just shows that we are so far reliant on just norms. And if you have a norm busting, autocratic, white nationalist like Trump in office, that could easily go out the window, to your point, Clay, about a DeSantis. You know what I'm saying? If you had a more competent Trump, we would be in deep shit right now. And I honestly don't know if we as American people have the willpower to overcome something like that. People are so complacent with how things are going. People are even complacent with this voter suppression that's happening all throughout the country. But the other point I'll make about this too is it's just really crazy how quickly the media orients itself to what the new scandals are, right? I mean, just a couple of months ago, the scandal was an attempted coup, right? Treasonous insurrectionist. And now the scandal is Kamala Harris's pen preference. I mean, give me a fucking break here. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so crazy how quickly we forget what kind of hellhole shitstorm we were in just 6 months ago with that illegitimate president, with that white nationalist administration, with even at the first 6 months of their administration, with the Muslim ban and with separating children. And I want the mainstream media to just get a grip, okay? And let's start, for one, really delving in a lot more into what we just went through, so that we don't quickly normalize it and it just becomes this horse race again. Oh, is Trump going to run again? Or who's the next Trump? And really normalizing this authoritarian politics and this just degradation and any kind of adherence to democracy from the Republican Party, and trying to just make a story out of every little tawdry, not even so tawdry thing that happens in the Biden-Harris administration. We need to come to terms with what just happened, because we're not far removed from it happening again, particularly if we continue to have this petty political punditry that focuses on trying to tear down people like Vice President Kamala Harris over little shit, to just let the next authoritarian Republican in.
It's so true. I mean, this time last year, my God, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
We were in the thick of the coronavirus pandemic. There were reports there wouldn't be a vaccine until 2023. Do y'all remember that?
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, it's going to be like this until 2023. I remember there was a report that came out from the Census Bureau. It was in July of 2020 that said nearly 30 million Americans didn't have enough to eat. 30 million. These are the headlines that were a year ago. And we just so quickly, at least the media, I should say, just so quickly forgets. Remember, there were these coronavirus town halls. I mean, it was just terrifying. The reports of people dying alone in a hospital room, and we had a president who was still downplaying it.
Telling people to drink bleach.
Right. And this is also the time that Ice Cube and Diddy were on the rise with their, black agenda and no black agenda, no vote, even though there was a black agenda. This was also the point where there was debate if there should be a black woman vice president. Would it hurt him? It obviously helped him. What's the stat, Reese, that once she became VP, his fundraising skyrocketed, right?
Yeah, like $100 million. Yeah.
Right. So you're so right that we so quickly forget where we were a year ago, 8 months ago, and how I can recall interviewing Senator Cory Booker, who said to me, it's on my YouTube page, I will put my life on the line if this president does not leave office, if he loses. So we were in a very horrific place. Now the news cycle is a bit normal. It's so now they're going to the stupid, deeply foolish stuff about what Stacey Abrams is doing. I saw a big attack on Ayanna Pressley the other day that I didn't even read. Like now they're just going to the crazy nitpicky stuff because we're not, I don't care what anybody says, we're not in the same kind of crisis.
Exactly.
We're just not in the same kind of crisis. Go ahead, David.
We just quickly, we have, I agree with you, we have forgotten where we were just a year ago, both politically and with the pandemic, and it's easy to forget that. I guess, obviously, I'm not a neutral, unbiased observer of the mainstream media, being a newspaper editor, but I will just say that, newspapers try to cover it all, but some of the sensational, more petty stories, to your point, Reese, do make their way to the surface and get play on social media and on cable TV and all that. There's no question about that. We're putting out hundreds of stories, not my section, but the Washington Post and the New York Times putting out hundreds, if not thousands of stories every day. But there's no question that some of the petty, sensational ones are the ones that rise to the top because they get people talking in a way that stories about child poverty or homelessness or increasing pandemic rates people's eyes start glazing over, and they do want to read about, what's the latest, chatter about Vice President Harris, and then before you know it, it's election time, and people are like, wait, what's going on? And we live in a country, I think all your listeners know this, that's closely divided. Attempted coup aside, President Trump got almost 75 million votes.
Yeah.
He has a ton of support. Republicans have a ton of support. And most of our national elections and our statewide elections now are contested along these very close lines. This goes back to the first topic we tackled. Voters have to exercise their vote to defend their priorities. In the context of voting rights, I don't think that's a partisan issue. If you're a Black voter and people are trying to make it harder for you to vote, you have to defend that. On terms of other policy things, whether you're Republican or Democrat, if you don't vote, you're leaving it in other people's hands.
So let's go to a call here, y'all. Let's go to Harry, South Carolina. What's up, Harry?
Hey, good afternoon. I wanted to comment on the general that was talking about he suspected Nazism. You all along.
Oh, Harry, you sound far, Harry. Got to speak into the mic, your phone. You there?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can now, brother. That's good. All right.
Okay. Say it again.
I just wanted to comment on the comments by the general who said he suspected, some sort of Nazi takeover. I think he knew all along. He wouldn't be a general if he didn't know. I mean, I think he's backtracking. That's just my personal opinion. But I think he knew all along, and I think all the other generals that he met with knew all along, or they wouldn't have had that meeting. But, that's, as the old saying goes, there's no honor among thieves. So he's trying to get his story straight and, get back in whatever good graces he's trying to get into. So that's my comment.
Can I just jump in on that, Clay? Let me just say this.
Ahead,
I don't challenge the caller's perspective. I've never interviewed General Milley. I don't know what he was thinking a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He obviously accepted the job of chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was he appointed under Obama or was he appointed under Trump? I
don't remember.
Let me slow down on that before. But here's my point. You had generals in this era General Mattis took the job as Trump's first defense secretary.
Mhm.
You had General McMaster take the job as Trump's second national security advisor after Flynn was fired early on in the administration, General Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
I do think you have a trend, hopefully this is to the caller's point, of generals who are experienced Washington hands, who have ambitions to be senior level cabinet officials, thinking that once someone like President Trump comes in, now I'm going back to 2017 timeframe, that they're going to, once they get in the conference room, they get the big job, they get in the conference room, they're going to be able to steer someone like President Trump. Maybe not control him, but show him, look, okay, now that you won, let's tamp down all the crazy rhetoric and let's do some normal stuff. And what they learned, and probably too late in a lot of these cases, is that President Trump, in a lot of instances, wasn't interested in doing normal, sober, responsible presidential stuff. He was interested in doing Trump stuff. I don't think I have to list out what that is. And it was a rude awakening, certainly for General Mattis, certainly for General McMaster. General Kelly, I think, tried to play both sides of that fence. I think he certainly fits the bill of what the caller is talking about. Someone who went along with Trump until he couldn't go along with him anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where General Milley fits into that pattern, but again, not to excuse them, not to be their PR person, but I think they some of them were under this impression that like, we'll be in control, and it's like, no, you won't.
Mhm.
But here's the one thing I struggle with. I hear you, David, but you said they learned, rude awakening. I mean, Hillary Clinton was laying this out for us when she was running. Like
Mhm.
Economists, historians, even conservative historians were predicting what would happen under the. They didn't. No one thought of a. No one said a pandemic, of course, but it was said the kind of president that he would be. I hear what you're saying, but I think the ball of confusion, like the Temptations, that I get into, is this was all predicted. This was
Mhm.
it was laid out to us that how dangerous he would be, and God forbid he got a second term. I
I don't
really
want it,
think there
right?
would be
And just to be clear, I'm not saying everybody
no.
was
I know,
confused. I'm not
I
saying anybody
know.
here on this show was confused. I'm not
You,
saying that the majority of
but
voters
how
were
could they
confused.
be confused? How could they have a rude awakening? Or was it that the opportunity that they wanted, who knows what that was, just didn't flesh out like they thought it would? Like
Mhm.
Lucifer falling from heaven. Like maybe they just thought, oh, this ain't. I'm not gonna be. I don't know. It just because I don't know how they didn't know. But I know what you're. I can see what you're saying, David. I'm just
They
like
were
I just.
to a certain extent. Again, I'm putting this is the best case scenario in their side of things, and I'm talking about Mattis, McMaster,
Yeah.
Milley. I'm not talking about General Flynn, who was fired
Yeah.
from the Obama administration, is now still a staunch Trump supporter. That's a separate case.
I got you. Let
I'm
me
saying
give Reese the
they
final
were in a
comment.
bubble. They were in a lot of ways they're in a bubble.
Were they? I wish I could be in that bubble. No, I'll play with you, David. Listen, we got like 30 seconds. Reese,
Okay.
Close us out.
All I'm gonna say is this: all these motherfuckers knew what was going on. It's called rehabilitation of the image and trying to, like Henry said, trying to basically, but I didn't know any better, but I was gonna do something that something did go down. Okay, well, you didn't have to do nothing and you wasn't doing shit, so there you go. You feel better now? All right, cool.
Leave it
That's
to
the best I
Reese.
can do in 30 seconds.
Leave it to Reese to make it plain.